Hello, beautiful human, and welcome to episode 7 of your success journey. And welcome to the Self Growth Lab, spreading hope and inspiration for your transformation so that you can live the life of your dreams. So, we're going to do a quick recap on episode 6, which was overcoming blocks to success. But first of all, I just want to say well done for still being here, for sticking it out. Being curious and persistent like this is very important. These are really good qualities to have if we want to learn about how to achieve success and maintain it. So, I sincerely hope that the series has been a turning point for you or has helped you in some way, given you some clarity on something. So give yourself a pat on the back and a high five. Well done. You can go high five yourself in the mirror as well. Not everyone is willing to stick around and do the work. So just keep going, and you're definitely on the right track. Step 6 was all about getting to understand the specific blocks. What's blocking us in the areas that we are struggling in, right? We saw that negative core beliefs and trauma imprints have a huge role to play in this, and they can affect more than one area on your wheel of life. So, if, for example, you have a core belief that says, I am not enough, that can filter into all different areas. It can affect your relationships, it can affect your finances, it can affect your career, it can affect even your health. So, it's important to dig deep, I guess, to a degree and just try and figure out what are these core beliefs and what can I do to change them so that these results that I'm getting start changing, that I start actually achieving what I want to achieve. And it's also really important to remember that we need to be patient with ourselves during this process. We need to also be persistent and consistent in our recoding. And it's important also to be gentle with ourselves, to practice that self compassion, that self care, and support ourselves through this journey. I think it's important to remember that, we've been thinking and feeling a certain way for so long. For many of us, most of our lives, we've been thinking and feeling this way, and that's been impacting the results that we're getting. And now all of a sudden, we're changing that. We're changing the thoughts, we're changing habits, we're changing our behaviors and things like that. And yes, we do it one day at a time, but it can also still feel uncomfortable because we're not used to doing it. The brain is not used to doing it. It likes the old automatic programs that are already running. And now, when you start making changes, it can put up a bit of resistance to these changes because it's learning something new and it's already got what it believes is a shortcut, a imprinted or a network of connections in the brain. So, yeah, that's where that self compassion comes in. I think I used the example of, if you see a child fall down, Esther Hicks always said that you don't like go and shout at the child and say, oh, like you're a dummy kind of thing for falling down. You pick the child up and you help it and you support it and you give it care and compassion while it's learning to walk. And we can apply the same idea to ourselves. Just be gentle with your beautiful self as you are doing this process of recoding. So in episode 6, I think you saw clearly that it is our inner system which is mostly influencing our outside world, our results, and the experiences we have. So if that is the problem, if there are these negative core beliefs and these trauma imprints, etc., then what is the solution? How do we overcome this? And the solution I suggested is to recode your inner system so that you can achieve success in all areas of your life, especially obviously the areas that you're struggling in, right? And then I shared that real time recoding exercise with you to help you start the process of updating your inner system so that you can live the life of your dreams. And I put that link in the comments in episode 5. So now, let's say we've recoded a lot, we've recoded certain areas, like we've gone from who I am is not enough to who I am is enough, or I am enough, or whatever core belief you've chosen to change and challenge and all of that. How do we then go on to maintain lasting success, to create that lasting success? And that is what step 7 is all about. Step 7 is simply creating lasting success. So, whether that's lasting success in our self growth area, we use that wheel of life again to help us, or purpose and performance, or your relationships, or your well being and lifestyle or your environment. So it's really quite simple, in my opinion. And to maintain lasting success, we need to simply maintain the recoding that we've done. We need to also keep practicing tools and techniques that support this recoding and keep it going. And we will find in time that that becomes the default or automatic way that we start thinking, feeling, and behaving in the future and reacting to life. If we look at that inner system, so we've shifted things within ourselves, and that's going to shift the results we're getting and the experiences. So, a way that you can do this, I think, is to just make a summary of the important points of this Your Success Journey series and then expand from there. So, I suggest making like a little summary and keeping it somewhere that you can reflect on every now and then and keep focused on working on those areas. So, I looked at the ABCs of lasting success. What were those that I spoke about in the first episode? And I mentioned that they were the foundation basically to our lasting success, right? As well as the three big ideas, understanding those. So, this is a strong starting point for you to keep on exploring more about everything that we've looked at. I've been doing this research for myself for many, many years, over 8.5 years. I've been on the go with this, learning about myself and recoding and everything, and I'm still learning. So it can take time, depending on how much time and effort you're willing to put into this. What you put in is what you get out. So the ABCs that we looked at were: A, design your dream life. So you've done that. Okay. Now keep moving towards that dream life. And just bear in mind that sometimes it may change, but especially in times of struggle and life happening, we hold on to that vision. It gives us hope. It gives us motivation when things do go wrong, if they go wrong, because we do face life challenges as we go throughout this journey. Um, the second thing was, the B part of this was to understand what blocks us. And now you know what blocks us. So keep working on the solution, which is your recoding and maintaining that, obviously. Be persistent and consistent, even when it feels like nothing is changing. Trust me, it will change if you keep doing the work, the aligned action. And then check in yourself often. Check in on yourself often. Did I say that right? To see, what area am I not doing so lucky in? Where can I make a few changes? What needs to be updated here still? And then just keep going back to that wheel of life and doing that rating, maybe however often you want, once a month, every quarter, every 6 months, once a year, whatever works for you. And remember, like I said, Nana, what you put in is what you get out. If you put in like 15, 20 minutes a day consistently, you will get consistent changes. But if you're only going to do 15 minutes once a week, your changes are going to take longer to be seen and felt. Um, Unless you're trying things like hypnosis, that might work a bit better or quicker. But again, remember, we said we've still got to develop the habits to support that new imprint. And then number C was to understand how to maintain lasting success. So you know now that you just need to keep maintaining everything that you've done. And I'm going to show you what science says about that as well. So I'm going to put a link in the comments as well for a document on what science says about maintaining these new patterns that we've made and why that's important, and also a little bit about how sometimes in moments of extreme stress, or if we're triggered quite badly by something, we can still potentially default to one of our old limiting behaviors, like maybe going into a rage for a few minutes or something like that, depending on what your triggers were, or what are the trauma links and things like that. So it is potentially possible, sorry, to go back to an old pattern, but that becomes less likely the more we use the new response or the new program that we've been working on. So I think it's quite an interesting document just to read through. And then the other thing is to water your life with love and gratitude and appreciation. so that it can keep blossoming into more. Giving thanks and practicing gratitude and feeling, appreciating things around you is such a beautiful foundation for abundance. Eckhart Tolle is also one of the great teachers that talks about this, how feeling and being in that state creates more experiences, more things to feel grateful for. So, how do we do this? Um, you can train yourself to feel grateful, just like you can train yourself to be calm and train your nervous system to not respond negatively to certain triggers, things like that. So, you can just get into the habit of like writing a gratitude list every day, or sitting and feeling thankful for what you have, but like genuinely feeling it, not just thinking about it. I'll give you an example. There was a time years back in or at the beginning of my journey where I was really struggling, and I could maybe afford like a tin of bully beef and some pasta to eat for a few days, with obviously a little bit of oats and things like that for breakfast. But like that would be my main meal, for those few days. And I would just sit and give thanks for this little bit of food that I had, but I would genuinely feel it. I had this little um, mantra or prayer, if you want to call it, that I would say before every meal time as I'm sitting about to eat. I would just close my eyes and I would say, "Thank you for this most delicious food. Thank you for all those who made this meal possible. May you and your families be blessed beyond measure. Thank you for my well being. Thank you for the money." Just like a little mantra like that. And I still say that today. And over the years, my food has become more and more and more and more delicious. And I've never gone without a meal. So that's the power of gratitude. I've seen it working in my own life. And it might sound something so simple, but it's really, really powerful. And you can do that for anything in your life, whether it's your relationship or your car or whatever. Just really feel thankful for what you have. There's genuine power in that. And then also in your summary, just write down the three big ideas we spoke about. And that the first one was the mind body life connection. Our inner system is affecting our outside world. And just kind of stay in that understanding, like stay teaching yourself about this mind body life connection and how important it is. And the more you've been doing this work we've been talking about, I'm sure that you can start seeing, or you have started seeing, how your thoughts are influencing your results and the experiences you're having, if you've been following that regularly and just having a look at how is this actually working in my own life. And I think I mentioned that in the beginning as well. The only way you're going to know if what I'm teaching you works is if you try it yourself and you start taking notes and just being observant as to how your life is playing out and what's causing those results. The second big idea was you have the power to design your own dream life, right? So now you know that, all of the things that help with that and create that. And I think one of the foundations of understanding that you have the power to create your own dream life is to get to a point where you really believe it. You really believe that I have this power within me to achieve what I want. And that also takes time. And we train ourselves to believe in ourselves if we lack that confidence, I mean. So that's a process on its own. Again, anything can really be trained if we just do the work. We can teach ourselves to do most things within the limits and bounds of nature, of course. And then the third big idea was to learn about money. And we spoke about how 70% basically of the world is living, um, like in lack, I guess, not enough or just enough or in debt or barely making it or just not 100% happy with where they're at. And 30% are living in sort of abundance and ease and flow and not necessarily happy, but they've got that financial freedom. And there's a reason for that, and that most of us weren't taught how to work with money. We weren't taught the skills of working with money. And that's something, again, you can train yourself to do. And then we had some helpful exercises as well. We've worked through, like nervous system regulation, things like breathing, meditation, self soothing ourselves, just supporting ourselves through these changes, especially if there's trauma involved. And again, professional help when necessary is a great idea. I showed you the importance of doing an energy boost. When we feel better, we do better. Try and do that before you're creating things or an interview or going to have a conversation with someone that's quite important. Like try and get yourself in a better feeling state. And then we looked at visualization briefly, and then like general things like daily recoding and the watch your bob exercise again, which is in your recoding part of things. And something else you can do also is join a support group with like minded people, or join communities like the Self Growth Lab that you may or may not be subscribed to at the moment, where, I'm trying to share this hope and inspiration to help people in their transformation. So join things like that are helpful and are going to help you achieve success. Find some really successful people out there if you want to be really successful financially. See how they've done it. We definitely learn from other people's experiences and the ideas that they have, and the ways that they achieve success. Like I have studied so many teachers over the years, and I've taken bits and pieces from each of them that resonated with me, that has helped me put together, for example, the 7-step process that I feel is quite powerful and can really be a great guide to lasting success because I've used it myself, right? And the other tip was to maybe get an accountability buddy just to help you with your recoding process, with all of this new learning. Someone you can just rely on and say, you know what, tick, I've done the work today and I'm up to date and I'm still moving forward. And it really does help. So, another tip I have is communication with especially those around us that we spend most of our time with, our loved ones, our family, whether that's a partner or your parents. And if you're comfortable, just share with them. I'm working on myself and I've realized that there's certain things that I do, or there's certain ways that I behave, and I have certain habits that aren't so great, and I'm wanting to change them. And please give me feedback if I behave this way, whatever that way is. Like if you quite judgmental or critical or avoiding things. Ask them just to point it out to you, because we don't always see our behavior, and there's a reason for that. I'm not going to go into that now. But yeah, we sometimes just behave automatically and we don't think about it, and it can be hurtful to those around us and cause problems, especially in our romantic relationships. So it's just something to think about. And, if they pointed out, for us not to be so sensitive and just understand this isn't who I am. This is just programs that have been running for so long that I haven't been aware of, and now I'm changing them. And yes, sometimes I'm going to default into those old negative ways, and that's okay. I'm human. It's just a program, and I can go and apologize to that person, whether it's a family member or my partner, and just say, I'm sorry, I defaulted back into that program. I will keep trying to create the new one. And you'll actually be surprised how people can support you, and will be willing to support you, especially if we're trying to obviously make these wonderful new changes and better ourselves. And then I also wanted to share a little bit of how I've used the 7-step process that I'm teaching you, just to show you that it does work. There is real time evidence, not just myself, but I've learned from a lot of people and I've studied a lot. So I'm going to use my self growth area as an example. And I've also reconnected with the God of my understanding, right? I call that my higher power. I haven't brought up anything to do with the God idea during the series, because I know it is personal and for some people it's sensitive. And I'm not here to give anyone any advice on religion or anything like that. But from my own experience, I have learned that I have a power greater than myself, the God of my understanding. Some people call it the universe, some people call it nature, some refer to it as the quantum field. But I personally believe that there is something that has been guiding me, because of certain experiences that I've had in my journey, and they have been quite powerful, and they've just kind of brought me back to that connection, and that's what I've chosen to do in my journey. So I do give, credit to my higher power that I have the second chance at life, considering the addiction that I went through and nearly losing my life. Um, so yeah, I don't take any credit for that. I'm just grateful to be here and to be trying to do better in my own life experience and share what I've learned with others. Okay, so the 7 step process for me went like this. Step one in this area, right? I had the desire, that's step one, to become sober, to live a sober life. It was very challenging. I went through a lot of denial backwards and forwards about whether I had a problem or not. But within me, deep within me, there was this desire. And I believe it was that persistent little desire in the background for wanting to be able to live a sober life, even though I couldn't see how to get there. I believe that that desire is what ultimately led me to finding a new way, with a higher power intervention at the end. I do believe that did happen. And that's how I ended up in rehab. And that's a story for another day. And then for step two, we know that's learn about yourself, right? So that's how we understand our inner system. When I was in rehab, I started to unpack this and I started to understand that I had problems within myself that were causing me to stay stuck in addiction, besides the fact that it is a disease, it's a brain disease, and also that I needed to accept that I have faults and I have flaws, and that's something I never ever did before. So I was able to start my journey of understanding the inner system then. Even though I didn't have this terminology or the 7 step process yet, I was in the process of learning about it and eventually, ultimately, now putting it together into an actual guide. So, in step three, it was about self awareness and self acceptance. And the self awareness I learned from those days already about daily reflection and becoming aware of what I'm thinking, feeling, and behaving. Again, I didn't know what I was doing really, but I was practicing these things and I was starting to unpack and see, what am I living like? Like, am I hurting people? Do I need to apologize to people? And all these things that I have taught you. So that started then already. And then the acceptance part of it was I had to look in the mirror and accept my life was a mess, that I had caused chaos, that I had these faults. And when I accepted this, and when I accepted that I had this disease of addiction, it was from that place of acceptance, instead of fighting it, from acceptance, I was able to then start making changes. Because for 23 years, I've been fighting the addiction. I've been fighting, trying to stay in control. And I had to get to a point of surrender. So, step four is called Design Your Dream Life, right? And we've gone through that whole process. And in my journey, especially in the earlier years of addiction recovery, I was led back to some of the great teachers that I had read about, like, and the books that they had written. And I was led back to the movie The Secret, which I'd watched in my 20s, which was all about creating a life and how thoughts become things and all of that. And I sat and wrote out a future that I wanted. I made a vision board, I stuck it on my wall. I wrote down precisely who I wanted to become. And I had that to hang on to even in the dark times. And there were some dark times, there were some real struggles um, through my process of what I call awakening. And they call it the beautiful destruction. We go through sometimes some traumatic things, or we just have some bad experiences that kind of make us wake up to the idea that we have choices and that our life could be different, and we have the power to make those changes. We just need to choose. We just need to have that willingness, that desire to want to change. So that was step four for me in the early days. So then I went on to step five, or it was part of the process. Step five was about taking action, right? Small steps equals big change. I didn't understand that again, but I followed the suggestion of the 12-step program of recovery. And I didn't just wish to be sober. I didn't just think about it anymore like I'd thought about it for 23 years. I went from thinking about being sober to actually doing the things I needed to do in order to stay sober. And I did that one day at a time. Same as I'm teaching you, small steps every day make big changes over time. I surrounded myself with like minded people who were living sober. So I went to recovery meetings and I went for coffee with these people, and they are beautiful humans, and I'm one of them. And I learned from them how to stay sober. So I immersed myself in recovery in order to stay sober. And we can do the same thing for success. We immerse ourselves in the principles of success and learning how to become successful and hanging out with people who are successful, doing online seminars, things like that. There's a lot of free seminars online today to get you started. And by doing all of these things, we we start to make these shifts within us. It's very helpful. And then step 6 was about overcoming blocks to success, right? So I had to look within myself um, before I even understood things like overcoming blocks to success. And I had to do what we call a moral inventory. And I was able to see my part in situations. I worked this part of the 12-step program properly. And I started to see, what had led to my addiction. I started to see that it wasn't everybody else that was always the wrong. I also had a part to play in my life struggles. So that was quite a powerful step. And I slowly started overcoming the blocks to success. And for me, in this area of my life, the block to success was trying to figure out how to stay sober. And I learned how to do that. And I'm still sober today. Step 7 was about creating lasting success. So I had to maintain what I had learned, as I was saying earlier on, and in the step now 7. I needed to maintain everything that I was doing, maybe not as intensely as I did in the first few years of recovery, but I still need to maintain it. And in that document about, the patterns and staying with the patterns that I was talking about earlier, is an explanation as to how this works. Once we've recoded, we don't have to sit and do it as intensely as we've been doing it over this 90 days or however many months it takes you to recode. We just maintain it by being aware of it and just sticking with the new habits, etc., that we formed. So today, I still stay connected to the recovery movement, and that's my step 7 in order to maintain lasting success for me. I've also continued to learn about addiction and just practice these principles of the recovery program. And I live today a new life almost automatically every day. I don't have a desire to numb my emotions anymore with alcohol. I don't have those urges to run away anymore. I'm learning to be mature and face life on life's terms and all these things that I have been taught in recovery. So that for me has been maintaining this new way of life. And sometimes I get it wrong. And on the odd occasion, I have a moment when I'm triggered. And I can tell you for free, though, it's very few and far between. And if and when something like that does happen, I immediately understand what the problem is. I do a quick reflection, figure out what triggered me, and I go and apologize to that person. And I can count on this hand how many times I've had to do that in many, many years, because I've learned to find that place of peace within myself, and I've learned to do better in life and react better. So, in closing, I think one of the biggest things, or two of the biggest things I've learned, is that I need to do this work. And I've said it so many times in this success journey series. I have to recode myself. I have to look within. I have to do those changes. I can't get somebody else to do it. There is no easier, softer, shorter way in my experience. Yeah, there's some techniques like hypnosis and things like that that can help us in this journey, but we still have to do some work, right? But, and I've mentioned it before, for many years, I thought I could find that shortcut. I wanted that easier, softer way. I didn't want to have to do all this work. It felt quite overwhelming at times. And so I actually set myself back. And I believe I could be light years ahead of where I am currently, even though I'm currently doing really well, in my opinion. I still feel that if I had listened to what the great teachers said years ago, when they said, you've got to train yourself, you've got to teach yourself to feel grateful, you've got to work on these core beliefs that are blocking you just a little bit every day. If I had listened to that instead of thinking I knew better and thinking that, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but maybe if I just do this, this, and this, it will happen easier. And it didn't. I had to come back to ground zero and I had to really do the work. And it's not just about saying to myself every day, I am enough, um, just reciting affirmations over and over again. That is not necessarily going to make the changes. The changes is a combination of your affirmations, your visualization, and actually feeling what it feels like in your nervous system to be confident. What does it feel like to live in abundance? What does it feel like to be grateful and thankful? Our subconscious learns powerfully from emotion, not just thoughts. It's like a combination of thoughts and emotions. So I need to think and feel and train myself how to do that to recode successfully. That's my experience. Again, if you're using hypnosis, that will be slightly different, um, but you would still need to maintain or create those habits as we've spoken about. So, long story short, if you were like me many years ago and you hoping for a quick fix, trust me, if you haven't got the money to go and dive into tons of therapy and counseling and coaching and all of that, just start at the beginning, follow these steps, look for other things that might work, and just gently every day make these changes. Because remember, it's happening here in the brain. Those connections are not going to change themselves. And the more we practice things, especially in the real world, not just the visualization exercises, but actually taking the steps to make the call if you're in sales, taking the steps to apologize to someone for wrong behavior. All these little real world actions is what ultimately helps to rewire what's happening in our minds. So that's my tip for you, and a very, very strong suggestion that you do the work and don't waste your time like I did. And I'm still doing work, to work in certain areas that I have struggled with for a long time. And the reason why I'm still struggling in those areas is because I know intellectually what the problem is, but I struggle to sit still and do the work consistently for weeks or months at a time. That's been my biggest downfall. And I mentioned before that I have an accountability partner now. So I am accountable to that person every day, and that's worked like a bomb. I'm now doing what I know I need to do every day for that specific area. So, if we come down to the real nitty gritty of it, at the center of what I'm teaching is a basic 3 step process that has been around for thousands of years, as Lisa Nichols said in the movie The Secret. And it's really a basic process that says step one, ask, ask for what you want. Step two, believe that you can have it. And step three, receive. All right, allow yourself to receive that. Now, it's a very simple process. And back in the day, I thought, okay, I can nail this. And I couldn't, because I didn't have the confidence or the belief within myself that I was able to. I didn't believe that I was worthy and deserving. And I had a lot of other core beliefs that were knocking me out of the way of achieving what I wanted, right? So, to me, step two, believe, is what has taken me years to achieve. Finding that confidence within myself, in my daily life, that I have the ability to achieve what I want. And I am building that more and more. And it becomes stronger and stronger as you do this work, to a point where, I can confidently want something and allow myself to receive it within hours and sometimes within days. So it took me a while to get there, but I'm having wonderful experiences with that. So to receive what I want, I need to have that faith, right? We need to get to a point where we know, like I know that this is going to happen. I know that what I've asked for is going to come. I have 100% faith that it's already on its way to me. And that is where our power lies, in this basic 3 step process. But the 7 step process to me is how I achieved that confidence within, through the recoding and all of that. Because I tried for a long time to try and ask, believe, and receive, and I just couldn't get it right. So, yeah, I hope that helps. This process is so simple, but when we don't have that confidence, we struggle to allow it to work in our lives. And that is really what my 7 step process comes down to. It's about going within, finding those blocks and getting to a point of confidence, getting to a point where we believe. That's a big word for me, believe. I believe in myself and my ability to create this dream life and then receive. I allow myself. I get to a point where I allow myself to receive this. I trust that there is, for me, a power greater than myself that's helping me and guiding me to what I want. I trust that the universe is abundant and all my desires can be fulfilled within the laws and bounds of nature. So, yes, it's a simple 1, 2, 3 process. Some people can use it quite effectively, quite quickly. Other people struggle, like myself. So, yeah, it really depends on you as a human being, what your internal situation is, if you have a lot of core beliefs that are limiting you, or if you have a lot of faith. Yeah, you can really have what you want most of the time. So I'm going to leave it at that for today, for this episode. Thank you for joining me on this journey. It's really been amazing. And again, I hope it's helped you in some way. I'm wanting to do a bonus episode 8 just to go into those tools like visualization, affirmations, meditation, and things like that, those techniques, those practices, because I didn't want to draw this episode out too long. So, yeah, you're welcome to join me in the next episode to learn more about that, and hopefully, it can just add a bit more value to your success journey. Until then, happy creating and try to enjoy this journey. Try to enjoy the unfolding. There are going to be difficult times that, life's like that. We have these moments, but they get better and better as we go along, as we recode. And then the link for chapter 6 for that workbook will be in the comments later. I hope you have a wonderful week further, and it's been an absolute pleasure to connect on some level. And also remember to look out for the Your Success Journey series 2.0 coming to you in September. And I look forward to just going into each step with you a bit more, try and make it a bit more concise, a bit more structured. And hopefully that can just help you expand your understanding a bit more and help you if you are struggling still in some areas. Until then, keep going, keep elevating, never give up. And remember, your future self thanks you for all the work you're doing now.